In today's show, the Trailblazers have made it to the halfway point, 41 games in. They've got a clear path to the play-in rounds. What does the second half of the season look like for this team? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers. Your team every day. Quick caveat as we get into that. Because of life stuff, work, travel, and some other items, I missed a show on Wednesday, and this is Thursday's program, and it's coming out late. Thanks for rocking with me. It is what it is. Let's get into the program. The Blazers, on Tuesday night, got walloped by the Golden State Warriors. A true walloping, a relatively rare in this first half of the season where they've just got absolutely demolished. They've been in a lot of games, but that loss marked the midway point of the season. And so what I want to do in today's show is talk a little bit about that game and talk about where they are 41 games in, plus some injury updates, good news on Deni Avdija, some good news on Jeremy Grant, and as they look ahead to games 42 to 82, we'll talk about kind of where they are and where they're headed. But let's first do a true fastest recap in the West for Tuesday night's game against the Warriors. Like I said, I missed Wednesday's program. We'll get into that and we'll look ahead. Blazers going to Golden State, game 41. Had a long homestand. They're out on the road, but they're out on the road without Deni Avdija. He sustained that back injury in their prior game, and you know it became, I don't know, clear. It was unlikely that he was going to play in this particular game. He's now listed as doubtful for the game against the Hawks on Thursday evening, which is pretty darn good news for Avdija. But they were going to be shorthanded. They're still playing without Jeremy Grant, who was actually updated to doubtful for this game, which was a pretty good sign that he would be playing against the Hawks, and he's upgraded questionable for that game as well. But you've got Jrue Holiday back, but he's still on a minutes restriction. He's coming off the bench. No Deni. No Jeremy Grant. Chris Murray's still out. Matisse Thybulle's still out. Scoot Henderson's still out. Deni is the big one, right? But they're still not whole yet. But the fragileness of this team seems to really be Deni Avdija seems to be holding a lot of this together. He seems to be the glue in so many ways. You knew this was going to be tough, and it was tough immediately. They're down 38-24 after one, trailed by as many as 18 in the first quarter. Caleb Love gets his first career start, someone who's played very, very well in his games against the Warriors, did not continue over in this one. And the Warriors are up 26 at halftime, 67-41. Blazers scored just 17 points in that second quarter. They're down 26, and Steph Curry's 1 of 7 from the floor. It's like they're getting walloped, and the Warriors' best player, who's pretty much been the guy who's carried them this season, you may have heard of him. He's one of the best players of his generation. At 37 years old, still one of the best players in the league, but he's struggling, and the Blazers have done okay on limiting even just the shot attempts. 7 total is somewhat meaningful, but obviously if you score 67, Steph doesn't need to force it. But they're just getting. I thought the offense really struggled, and that led to their defense just not being very good. I thought they were bad on both ends in that first half, but they kind of made it a game. Jrue Holiday starts the second half, and the Blazers make a little push. They have a 3-on-1 with about 6:45 to go in the game. Shaedon Sharpe gets a steal. Jrue Holiday has a layup underneath that would have cut a 12-point lead to 10. Instead, he kicks out to Toumani Camara in the corner. It's a wide open shot, but it's a layup for a three-pointer. The layup, even in the era of three-point shooting, layups are more valuable. Jrue Holiday kicks out to Toumani. He misses a wide open three. It's a makeable shot, but you're talking about something like an open layup that Jrue takes probably somewhere in the 90% good range, and even a wide open three is only even for Toumani's probably 40%, 45% at the most from the corners. He's actually a better above the break shooter than corner 3-point shooter according to the numbers, but he misses. because it's a long rebound and because it's an unbalanced floor, the Warriors don't even have their guys back. As soon as they get a long rebound, they get a hit ahead and an alley-oop. Then the Blazers miss. C.J. Sissoko misses a three, and the Warriors come down. Steph Curry gets a fly-by three in the corner. It's like he's one of the very good ones. And the Blazers quickly turn it over, and Jimmy Butler gets a dunk on a run-out, uncontested run-out. And all of a sudden, what would have been a 10-point game and getting your defense back is back to 19. The game's over. Thiago Splitter takes a timeout. That was it. It was basically 30 seconds from that decision not to shoot a layup to that would have cut it to 10 to 19. They might not have won, right? When you're down 26, it takes so much energy to come back, but I thought that was the sort of the momentum swing of the entire game. And they go into the fourth quarter down 24. They cut a 26-point lead to 24 in the third quarter despite all that good work. In the fourth, never closer than 19. Draymond doesn't play, and Steph doesn't play for the Warriors in the fourth quarter at all. Jimmy Butler plays 90 seconds. The Blazers don't play Tumani Kamara, Donovan Clingan. They let their dudes play. You get 12 full minutes of Ryan Rupert and basically a whole fourth quarter of garbage time, and the Warriors cruise 119-117. That's your fastest recap in the West. I don't think there's major takeaways from this other than that, like, without Deni, this team really struggles. I thought this one showed a little bit of the limitations of Shaedon Sharpe's game, but like I don't think he played poorly. I really don't. I don't think this was a game where you could be like Shaedon Sharpe sucked. Like I think he's had plenty of other games when he's been worse. He finishes with 19 on 9 of 15. He has one turnover in his 28 minutes. I just think, like, moreover, instead of like box score obvious stinkiness, I think it just mostly showed like his ability to be like the primary guy with a really limited roster is like it maybe not where you want it to be if you want him to be like a superstar in January of 2026, right? I think in some ways this kind of laid bare the Blazers' dependence on Deni, and maybe like somewhat in some ways the limitations of Shaedon Sharpe, but I don't think this was a bad Sharpe game in the grand scheme of things. I think this was just a completely outmatched roster. And then, their secret sauce to beating the Warriors, they were 3-0 against the Warriors coming in. They'd had 2 games against the Warriors where they shot absolutely the lights out from 3 as a team, and another game where Caleb Love hit 6 threes. It's not all just 3-point variance, because in that second game of the season, they beat the Warriors by 20, right? They dominated them. That was Thiago's first game. But like, the way that they had been able to handle this team was creating advantages with getting into the paint and spraying out and getting threes, and they just didn't have their advantage creator, right? They didn't have that guy who does that consistently, and that's just a clear area of growth for Sharpe. If you're looking at first half and second half, I think Shaedon Sharpe's played the best basketball of his season, or of his career, but also like, I think some of his limitations have been clearly on display in this first half of the season, and his growth as someone who does more than just than just score is going to be a big part of like what his ultimate ceiling is. And I think this Warriors game was a pretty good encapsulation of some of that, albeit like in a totally unfair setting to judge him as like an overall player, because it's just like, I don't know. It's just you're not playing with enough like above average or even average NBA players. Not playing with enough NBA players, period, to get this one done. Okay. The Blazers with this loss fall to 19-22. They're 9th in the West. They have 6 more wins at this time this season than they did a year ago. And this last year is when they took off and they kind of they started rolling. The defense got going. They started winning. They ripped off 10 of 11 right at the halfway point. But also like they kind of felt like they had discovered something with a good defense, and Deni Avdija was really good in the second half of the season, and they kind of like this was their 41 games of proof of concept of like thinking they can be take a step. And they have taken a step. They're better than they were last year, no doubt about it. But I want to talk about kind of where they are and where they're headed, and we will do that in the second segment. Join me there, won't ya?
I carry a lot of responsibility in my household. If something happened to me, there would be serious consequences. We have a mortgage. We got tuition. We got everyday bills. Those aren't going anywhere if something happens to me. And I know that's an overwhelming feeling, but I'm taking steps to protect my family by getting life insurance through Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast, easy, and 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. And as of March 2025, Business Insider named Ethos the #1 no medical exam instant life insurance provider. Ethos has 4.8 out of 5 stars on Trustpilot with over 3,000 reviews. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get your free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. That's ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. Ethos.com/LockedOnNBA. Application times and rates may vary.
All right. So 19-22, ninth in the West. According to Clean the Glass, the Blazers are a cool 23rd in offense, 18th in defense, 23rd best net rating in the league. They have the scoring differential of, according to Clean Glass, is based on your net rating, which you're expected to win. The scoring differential of a 16-win team, and they've won 19 games. And a lot of that is because they've played a ton of close games. And if there has been a sort of mark of this team in the first half of the season, is for better or for often worse, they've played a boatload of clutch games. The second most games that the NBA defines as clutch as any team in the league. Dallas is number one. Dallas is a bad basketball team, 10 games below 500. Like it is playing close games on any given night can be the sign that you are competitive. Playing close games throughout the season is actually probably a bad indicator. It is on the bad indicator is maybe the wrong way to say it for a team like the Blazers, but it is not the indicator. Like point. Scoring differential, just like margin of victory, is overall for the season is probably a pretty good indicator of how good you are, right? If you consistently blow teams out, you avoid close games. When you win big. Like that's usually like on the course of the season, like a pretty good, a strong indicator for like talent, right? A strong indicator for who's actually good. And if you play a bunch of close games, it's not always good. There are times like hanging tough with good teams on any individual night, you're like, that was a good game. I'm not like saying that playing close games is bad in general. I'm just saying like taken as a full sample. But you've seen it, right? Like the game here against the Mavs when the Blazers could have won going away and let the Mavs get in it. Both games against the Kings in that set that same week, where home game against the Kings and games on the road against Sacramento. It's like they didn't play well in either of those games, and they kind of found a way to magically win a game at home, and they just kind of held off the Kings on a night where neither team could score at all on the road. Those are kind of like what I'm saying, like the clutch games that are maybe not the mark of a good team. But the fact that they have been in close games, and early in the season they were really struggling to win in the clutch, right? They were grinding it out and finding ways to be competitive and pesky enough to be in competitive games, pretty much against everybody, right? They could stay in the game. They haven't really gotten, they're. I think there's two ways to look at this. They're 14-12 in their 26 clutch games, right? Or the other way you could say it is that they're 5-10 in games that have never been within 5 in the final 5 minutes. So like right now, they don't have a formula. They don't have a consistent formula for rolling over teams, games that were like truly never competitive, right? When they are in games that are competitive, when they are in games that are like, when there are games that are non-competitive, they're typically on the wrong end. Like, say, the Warriors game, for instance. They haven't had many games where they've rolled over teams. In fact, recently, the Blazers have had, 2 in a row over the last 10 days. Or 2 out of 3 in the last 10 days, New Orleans and Utah, where it's like, oh, they finally beat the snot out of bad teams. That's real progress. And I really do think like margin of victory, your scoring margin is the scoring margin over the course of the season is a really strong indicator. And the Blazers have, right, like the 23rd in net rating. Their scoring margin is not exactly the mark of a really good team. That said, that they have kind of figured out how to close out some games with the ragtag group they've had, because if there's been another thing that has defined the Blazers this season, is that the Warriors game is an anomaly in terms of how lopsided the score was, but not an anomaly in terms of how full the injury report was. Injuries have been a defining part of the season. Some of that is baked into this, right? Like whenever someone tells you how many games they've missed and blah, 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 they signed Damian Lillard knowing that he would miss the full season, right? They kind of did not have that roster spot by choice. So I think overall that's maybe a little bit overstated, but in general, like, Scoot hasn't played a single game. Matisse Thybulle played 4 games. Drew Holiday missed 26 games. Jeremy Grant's going to miss 18 before he likely returns against the Hawks this evening. The only player who really, the player who hasn't missed time is Deni. He missed his very first game of the season against the Warriors. And a mark of Deni over the last few years, since his rookie season, has been durability, has been availability. It's really valuable. But like the fact that the Blazers kind of struggled in close games early, it's like, yeah, they're pesky, but they're just like not talented enough. And the fact that they have kind of turned that around, have been more competitive in these close games, I think actually does speak to real improvement. I think you can watch them more than like the data helps you figure it out. Because the bigger sample they kind of look mediocre, but I think you can watch them and like see very clearly that they are better than they were. They have improved. And I think like the defining characteristic of this entire first half of the season and really encapsulated by that loss to the Warriors is how good Deni has been. He has changed the sort of general trajectory of the team. Not in terms of like, I think they're going to win a championship next season or whatever, but like the sort of struggle that and maybe the criticisms that I've laid against this particular franchise that I talk about into the microphone almost every day, except during some strange Wednesdays in January when life really throws a couple wrenches in the plan. But like, is that I thought, while I felt they found a bunch of interesting role players and some positive players and a bunch of B+, A-, that they didn't really have like a true star to sort of coalesce the plan around. Deni Avdija has become that guy. He has become a guy that if he has 25, 5, and 5, he's not quite hitting his averages. That's pretty good. I think I mentioned that Deni's playing at an all-NBA. He's gone beyond all-star level to play at an all-NBA level. Like, I think he will get votes for third-team all-NBA, if not straight up land on third-team all-NBA. Some of that will depend on the Blazers' record, because all-NBA much more than all-star rewards winning. It tends to, if you look at the All-NBA rosters over the last few seasons, teams that win tend to get rewarded more than teams that don't. So I don't know that Deni will, but I know that he's playing on that level, right? And that has been the biggest discovery of the first half. Now you can move forward with decisions around Deni Avdija is really stinking good. What decisions can we make as a franchise that help Deni be better? First and foremost, just more talent, right? They just need more and better players around him. I think there's every so often I get an email hemming and hawing about worrying about getting the ball out of Deni's hands. Sure, right? Like, he's awesome with the ball in his hands, but the best version of this team still involves Deni being able to take at least sometimes a back seat to someone who can really control the offense, not just score, but make plays and get advantages and do the things that Deni does at a very similar level. If they're going to be really competitive, Deni playing off of another player of equal talent of him is going to be that's the path forward, right? So I think if there are sort of the defining moments of the first half, right, it is that the injury report has been consistently full, and yet they're still in 9th place in the West. Deni Avdija has emerged as a all-star and a bona fide player that you can make roster decisions with him in mind. And I don't know that they have another player on the roster. You can say, like, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't want to say, like, hey, we like Shaedon Sharpe and we're going to build with him moving forward. Or we like Toumani Camara, we can build with him moving forward. That is to say that, like, those players have not reached a level where you would make decisions on how best to complement them. It's like, no, they got to get in where they fit in right now. They got to continue to grow and get good, and you're not going to build, whatever, try to duplicate what they do and like build over the top. But those are helpful players that help you win, whereas Deni has achieved a sort of cornerstone level status where you think about what players, what skill sets, what does Deni really need to be his best self, because his best self is one of the 20 best players in the NBA right now, and how can you move forward with that? And that's the challenge for every team. Defining your identity gets defined by your best players, and the Blazers, through Deni Avdija's emergence this season, have discovered what their identity can be, and that in and of itself, regardless of the record and success and all of those things, that is the biggest victory of this half of the season, is that sort of clarity of what the next version of the next good, like truly good and consistently competitive version of the team is going to look like. And it's going to look like building around Deni Avdija's strengths, getting the ball in his hands and letting him be the monster that he is, and hopefully eventually taking a little bit off his plate so he can get back to being also a very good defensive player as well, because there was a point when he was also a very good defensive player. I don't think he's been able to do that at the same level this year just because of the ask for him. I think the Blazers are going to make the play-in, and I think that is a non-controversial statement. Let me explain that to you, why I think it is a lock that they finish. Basically, the floor for this team is 10th place in the Western Conference. They are going to play postseason basketball. Join me in that third segment. We will talk about just that. First, though, I want to tell you that today's program is brought to you by Wayfair. The new year's here. You know the deal. This is January 15th as you're listening to this, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. If you're spending more time at home, you might as well love how it looks and feels. That's why you should turn to Wayfair. It's the one-stop shop for getting your home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. Wayfair has everything you need for a full home refresh all in one place. Whether you're updating that living room, organizing your office space, upgrading your work from home setup, and you need a couple other solutions, Wayfair's got a huge selection that makes it easy to find exactly what works for you within your style, that fits your style and is within your budget. Shopping is easy, delivery is smooth, and everything arrives exactly as expected. It makes getting back into a routine or refreshing and finding a new routine a lot more manageable. Get organized, refresh, and back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Still a pass versus point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. The Portland Trail Blazers are going to play postseason basketball this year. I feel confident about that. Back in November, I said the same thing before I kind of realized the extent of Scoot Henderson's injury and how long Matisse Thybulle would really be out. And at the time, I didn't know that Drew Holiday was going to miss 9 weeks or whatever. Obviously, injuries are somewhat baked in, but those are longer-term injuries that I probably, in November when I was crowing about, I guarantee they're going to make the play-in, I probably didn't bake into my own calculations. I said, you're going to get some short-term injuries. Guys are going to get healthier and be all right. It's January, 2 months later. Let's check back in. The Blazers are going to make the play-in. I hesitate to say this, but whatever. It's a stone cold lock. It's a stone cold lock. Just look at the standings. The Blazers are currently in 9th. Conceivably, and I'll talk about this in a moment, they could climb, right? But I'm going to talk about falling right now. I think this team's a stone cold lock to finish 10th. The Pelicans, the Kings, the Jazz, the Mavs, those are bad teams that have limited ability and, more importantly, little incentive to be less bad in the second half of the season. Like the Pelicans have some incentive since they don't control their own pick, but they don't have the ability to do it. The Kings aren't good. The Jazz have real incentive with a top 8 protected pick to fall out of this thing. The Mavs are probably headed towards just a soft tank to close the season, and then they'll be rewarded with the number 1 pick in the draft again, of course, once they trade Anthony Davis for spare parts, assuming they do that. Memphis, right behind the Blazers in 10th, seems to be on the verge of a blow-up. Seem to be, trying to figure out how to move on from Ja Morant. Obviously, Ja Morant doesn't play very much and hasn't been very good this year, so perhaps trading him will make them a little bit better, but it also might portend to more moves. It could, I don't know if they'll immediately trade Jaren Jackson Jr., but they might head towards a swifter rebuild. Like when you trade Desmond Bane for all those first-round picks, that's an incredible deal. And then when you aren't good on the back half of that, it does give you some incentive to say, let's just bail on this thing this year because we're not good enough to get there. And this era we're heading to a new era of Grizz basketball centered around we shall see. But I don't think Memphis is likely to make a move to get better. I don't think they're likely to make a move to push to get better. I think they're much more likely to trade for young players and some draft compensation for Ja Morant or whatever they might be able to get for a player of his ilk and availability. be not very good. The straight up tank the last 20 games of the year. Like Memphis is much more likely to be falling than climbing. So the only team that's like behind them in the standings right now that's likely to rise is the Clippers, an incredibly old team that has been started the year 6-21 and has played much more competent basketball since then. So like even if the Clippers stay hot and play at a 55 win pace to close the season, that's only one team that's behind the Blazers currently in the standings that you feel like, oh no, they're going to catch them. 10th seems like the floor for this team. They're going to play postseason basketball. And if you had said at the beginning of the year, and many of, I do this podcast all the time, it's like the sort of perception at the beginning of the year was that the Blazers will be fighting for a play-in spot, and if things break right, they could climb up to like the top of the play-in. I think there were maybe some more optimistic fans that thought the Blazers were like the 5th best team in the West, but optimism is a heck of a drug, but is not. It certainly wasn't the consensus in terms of like high end outcomes. I think the consensus high end outcomes was like this is the 7th best team in the West, 7th or 8th, and certainly that's within their sights. They got. It's like 3 games to 8th and 4.5 to 9th, right? Or 4.5 to 7th right now. Like certainly they could get there, right? With 41 games, that's not insurmountable by any means. But I think like they have to get healthy. They got to keep it rolling. They got to get healthy and stay healthy. All those things. But like, I think their floor is 10th. Like, I think they can climb because they don't need to look behind them. There's not many teams that are really like chasing them down. That would cause them to slip out of the play-in round. So if they want to play this out, and I believe they do based on everything that they have said and done publicly, they can look ahead in the standings. And if they can get hot and win games and keep it rolling and play a stretch of basketball like they did before this loss to the Warriors and the Knicks, where they were like playing their best basketball of the season and a little bit beat up. If they get a little bit healthier and get back to that sort of rhythm and Deni keeps rolling, yes, they can look up in the standings, chase down the Warriors, chase down the Suns, chase down any other team that happens to fall and has some bad luck in the back half of the season. Like I think they can look up the standings and not down them just because I think their floor is 10th. Speaking of them playing basketball games, they do play one this evening against the Atlanta Hawks, and we've got some good news. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Deni Avdija is listed as doubtful heading into that game. That's really, 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 really good news because that means that we don't have a long-term injury update on Deni Avdija. I think that probably means, technically in the NBA parlance, it means that he's 25% chance of playing. I think in reality, in the way doubtful tags typically work in the league, he has like a very limited chance of playing. This is a number I'm making up, but we'll call it like a less than 5% chance to play. Like doubtful tags, just watching the league and as the way I do is it is. Those are not the tags of guys that jump into the mix. But the way the Blazers have done it recently is guys go from doubtful, they miss that game, and they go to questionable. So I think Deni is at least on track to be available Saturday against the Lakers. Jeremy Grant, who has been out and missed 18 games, 14 games, has not played since December 18th. I'm getting those numbers confused. 14 games, has not played since December 18th. With a day-to-day injury that caused him to miss a month, but with this Achilles soreness, but like he was listed as doubtful against the Warriors, which is the sign like getting close but not ready, and now he's listed as questionable against the Hawks. I believe Jeremy Grant will play and on a minutes restriction. That means that there's a chance that by Saturday, the Blazers are going to have Drew Holiday back playing 20 or 22 minutes a night, Jeremy Grant back playing 15-ish minutes a night, and Deni Avdija probably back to. We'll see what his minutes limit is, but like somewhere in that half the game, if not straight up more range, depending on his general injury level. So I think like they're getting healthier. We haven't had many of these moments where they're just like straight up healthier. Where it's like multiple guys are getting back. In fact, the last time we were going to do this, like they're getting healthier, Deni Avdija immediately got hurt. And basketball is unfair and fickle, and injuries are part of the game and all those things. But I think the Hawks, they're likely to still be a little bit shorthanded. Although Jeremy returning, very likely it'll be good news. But then after that, it's like Deni, Drew, two of their best players. Jeremy Grant, who's been pretty good at times this season, really, really good. I think he's been a little up and down, but at times this season, excellent. And another shooter that they really need out on the court. Shaedon Sharpe playing his best basketball. Donovan Clingan playing his best basketball. Like this at the halfway mark for all of their warts, right? And like, I think like the play-in tournament has kind of warped what we think is success, right? Because in the past, like if you say like, oh, this is the 9th best team in the West, you'd be like, they stink. But like the goal this season was to play competitive basketball, prove that they're in there, play postseason basketball, prove that they're kind of in the mix, and then find out what you got. So far, they have pretty much, I don't know, locked in, but they're very, very, very likely to be playing at least one postseason game, if not more. They have a franchise-defining player in Deni Avdija who helps them make decisions around everything else. And if nothing else, they are hovering around 500 in a talented Western Conference while dealing with a bunch of injuries. I think there are ways to look at this as glass cracked and leaking and not just half full but spilling out. But I think there are very obvious ways to say that glass is not only half full but relatively easy to fill up moving forward. Choose your own adventure in terms of your level of optimism, but I think if you were to pitch this exact scenario at the start of the season, there'll be a couple games under 500 and right in the play-in hunt. To the vast majority of you, dear listeners, you'd say, nice. That's kind of where I thought they'd be. I'm excited where they are. I can't wait to see where this goes. Yeah, I think this season has, for the most part, been darn rewarding. And now they get to play 41 more games to figure out how big of a reward they're able to capture. That is going to do it for today's program. I didn't mention it in either of the breaks, but I'll mention it now. If you listen this far in the show and you missed my voice because you are a true everydayer, make it official. Join the Everydayer Club, $5 a month, $50 a year. You get ad-free versions of this episode in the audio feed, plus access to the members-only Discord. Go check it out. There's a link in the show notes to this episode. It's lockedonblazers.supercast.com. You can find more in the show notes. Tell your friends about the show. I apologize for this one being late. Life got in the way. And I will hopefully life will not get in the way moving forward. Blazers play the Hawks tonight. I will talk to you after that one. Tell your friends about the show. I appreciate you listening. I will talk to you soon.